I have a somewhat interesting relationship with the Solo Leveling series. I read the manhwa a few years ago, well after I had been presented to the world, but not before the manhwa had reached its conclusion. While reading this story, I routinely had issues with the narrative choices that caused me to vent to my mother-in-law, who was also reading the story at the same time. Yet I always continued to press on and read the epic that was unfolding on my phone screen. After the manhwa had reached its climax and concluded its story, I made the internal declaration that this story was not good. I believe that this story fell short as a narrative, the main character was devoid of any personality, and that the conclusion left me confused and wanting more. And as the years went by, as people discussed it and praised it for what it was, I harbored these thoughts and believed those who sung its praises had poor taste. When the anime was announced and a wave of excitement spread throughout the anime community, I attempted to resist any amount of excitement. I believe that all Solo Leveling Season 1 had to do was have good artwork, good animation, and deliver on its action scenes, and I figured it would gain a certain level of success if it met these metrics. Eventually, I decided to watch the first season as it was being released weekly, just to see how it was being handled. Fast forward to today. Season 1 has come and gone, people are excited for what more is in store with the story. Season 2 is currently being released, and I'm amongst the people who are highly enjoying the second season and who thoroughly enjoyed the first season. So what changed? Well, I changed. Or more specifically, my concept of what defines a good anime changed. You see, when I was initially reading Solo Leveling's manhwa, I was in a mental space where I thought that only anime, or stories overall, that had an interwoven plot and ambitious and familiar characters could be considered good. This meant that any anime, manga, or manhwa that didn't showcase these traits couldn't be considered a good story, and anyone who thought it was didn't understand what it truly meant for an anime to be good. Basically, I was insufferable and lacked a lot of nuance, introspection, and consideration. When the Solo Leveling anime came out, I was mildly curious but couldn't allow myself to vocalize that. So I rationalized my intrigue by claiming that I was curious of how they would handle the story since it's an adaptation of a manhwa instead of a manga. And this wasn't completely inaccurate, but my main driver was my own curiosity, as it is with any anime, regardless of its source material, whether it be manga or manhwa or anything of the sort. My views have changed a lot since I first read Solo Leveling, and the factors I consider when deciding if the anime is good or not have as well. And in my reflection of the second season of this anime and my overall relationship with it, I realized something important, at least important to me. I realized that any good anime, or story for that matter, will keep me coming back. I watched all of Solo Leveling Season 1 and I'm currently up to date with Season 2 because I find the story to be interesting and worth my attention, even though I've already experienced the story once before. I've learned that in having a rigid self-definition of what good anime has to look like, I almost ignore the most important thing, at least in my opinion. I almost ignore the emotional component that exists when experiencing a story. Solo Leveling may not have the most complex story, and it may not have a main character that is as dynamic as others. Yet, in spite of all of this, I kept coming back to the story and I keep choosing to watch it week after week. I think Solo Leveling is actually fairly good. You could assume this based off its popularity, and while I recognize that popularity shouldn't be the only metric that's considered, it should indicate when something's worth looking into. When it comes to looking at whether something is good or bad, top tier or trash, overrated or underrated, I've learned that it's all so subjective, and what matters most is your relationship to what you're engaging with. There may be a story that is poorly written and lacks an effective climax, yet that story can hold a level of significance to you that keeps you coming back again and again. And that's more important than anything else. Yes, there's always room for critique, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy something if it's flawed. I find Solo Leveling to be a really enjoyable story. While it might not have the strengths of other series, it has its own strengths that keep me coming back week after week. And that's all I really want in a series. I think what I'm trying to say is that I think Solo Leveling is good, and it took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to actually say that. But what about you? How do you define good versus bad when it comes to anime, and what traits do you tend to look for? Let me know down in the comment section. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next video. Hopefully my thoughts came across clearly in this. Basically, I was just trying to get to the point of recognizing, at least for me, that good anime is so subjective, right? And in my experience, having such a rigid and such a staunch, I hope I'm using that word right, having such a rigid definition of what it has to look like, it can cost you great experiences. If I had that mentality, I wouldn't be watching Solo Leveling right now. And I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And it's not just Solo Leveling. There's other stories as well that are similar. They don't meet this certain metric, but like I found joy in. And it's not to say that they're bad stories I've enjoyed. They're actually good stories. They're just different, which is fine. Hopefully I'm making sense here, not just rambling, but let me know your thoughts in the comment section. What is one story or one thing that you thought you wouldn't like, that you thought was trash, or anything that you just did not think met your criteria for good, great, or whatever? And you watched it and you enjoyed it and you found yourself really engaged with it. Let me know what that series is for you down in the comment section below. Thank you all again for watching. Yeah, that's all I got to say. So I'll catch y'all next week or the week after that. I'll catch you in the next upload. Let's say that. Let's go with that.